All right, Vanessa, thank you so much for being with us. You wrote an incredible memoir, and can you tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about your story?
Yes, absolutely. So my story is about a speech pathologist. That's me, the speech pathologist that acquired a very rare neurological disorder that left me unable to communicate. It was a horrific journey being a speech pathologist, being the patient in the bed, and I talk heavily about the psychological impacts of an ICU stay in my book. The book is about my entire journey from start to well, I wouldn't say finished because it's still ongoing. But it talks about the journey of being the patient in the bed and what it's like having the knowledge and the skill set as a speech pathologist, but yet being the patient and receiving the speech therapy services.
I can't even imagine what you must have gone through. What is it? What is your first reaction when you realize you can't communicate?
Sheer terror, sheer
Yeah.
fear. Um, there's nothing scarier. Being a speech pathologist, when I woke up unable to communicate and there was a speech pathologist looking at me, ready to assess me, I will never forget looking at her and tears rolling down my eyes. And I was thinking, what is she thinking? What is she thinking having to treat? She was approximately my age-ish, you know, young child at home. What is it like for her to treat me? Because I know how I feel being the patient right now. I am scared to death. I cannot talk. I am the patient in the bed now. I cannot talk. I cannot move. I cannot eat, swallow food. What is it like for her to look at me in the bed and conduct an assessment on me?
So frightening. Can you tell us what was wrong?
Yeah, I had a rare neurological disorder called Guillain-Barré. It wasn't diagnosed probably about 4 or 5 months after I acquired it. And the way that the virus attacked my brainstem and spinal cord, it basically paralyzed my upper body, making it so I couldn't move my upper body. I couldn't communicate because I had a tracheostomy and I was um, the tracheostomy and I was in a, sorry, I'm trying word finding ventilator. Um, and I couldn't swallow food because all of the muscles and all of the nerves for those regions were paralyzed.
Looking back on it, were there any warning signs? How did it even come about? Do we
No
know?
warning signs, completely fine, completely healthy. Never had anything beyond a head cold or the flu in my entire life. Just one day woke up not feeling good, felt like I had a flu, and quickly deteriorated. Within a week's time, I was in the ICU, unable to move, on life support. And doctors had no idea what was going on. They just knew that I was declining rapidly.
Oh my God, it's just terrifying just to hear. What do you discover about yourself when afterwards, after you come to the other side, get to the other side, what do you realize about yourself and your fortitude?
It wasn't until much after, and I'm talking years after, and even now I'm approaching my 6 year anniversary, that I've realized I'm a lot stronger than I ever thought I was. I always thought, I can endure a lot. I could, trip, cut myself, have a child, raise a child, and those things are all hard. But nothing is as hard as surviving an ICU stay, learning to walk again, learning to talk again, the fear associated with learning to eat food again, and the fear associated with being afraid of relapse, the fear associated with being afraid that you're going to choke and die in front of your family as you eat food. It takes immense strength to get through all of that. And I don't know how I did it. I did it, or I have done it. I continue to do it, but it's like nothing I've ever experienced, and I surely don't wish to experience it ever again, nor do I wish anybody else could ever
Hmm.
experience it.
How do how has your life changed?
The first thing as a speech pathologist that I look for in all of my patients right now is mental health. I have learned that patient mental health, when you go through an ICU stay, frequently you experience significant depression, anxiety. And now, when I'm treating anybody, I don't care what their age is, I am looking at the caregiver's mental health, I am looking at the patient's mental health because depression, anxiety is real following an ICU stay. In my book, I address heavily the topic of PICS, post-intensive care syndrome. And that's basically the mental health effects that happen to patients after an ICU stay. So things such as brain fog, the depression, the anxiety. It's a lot of PTSD that we experience as ICU survivors. When I came home from the ICU, I remember telling my parents that I feel like I just came back from war. And that is the PICS, the post-intensive care syndrome.
Yeah, you brought up caregivers, and I feel like there's a little bit more light shed on what the caregivers go through too, with the Gene Hackman case right now, and Bruce Willis and his wife. I think sometimes we're so focused on the patient, as we should be, but you forget about the caregivers too. They're going through all the emotions, the ups and downs, and then trying to figure out if they're making the right decisions as well.
Yeah, caregivers have a lot of pressure on them. I have a friend that just actually recently launched a book about caregiving because she's been on both sides of it, received care and a giver of care. And it's real. And it's so real that often ICU survivors' families experience PICS, and it's called PICS family, PICSF, because they often experience trauma, PTSD. They have fears of sounds and noises and relapsing and all the same things that ICU survivors experience. So it's real and they need to be addressed as well.
Where you weren't able to make any decisions, right?
No, no, not at
No.
all. Mm-mm. I had to rely completely on my husband to advocate for my needs and communicate everything for me. It was a very scary time.
Now, you realize now how strong you are after going through an unbelievable event. How can we as women understand our strength without having to go through the tests? How would you tell your daughter? I don't know what child you have, but if you had a daughter, what would you tell her to, you know, I feel like we don't prepare our kids enough. I don't know, maybe we don't tell them like how strong they are. They have to figure it out. But what can we do as a parent to better prepare our kids?
Oh, that is an amazing question because I am actually dealing that with that same thing right now. My daughter is experiencing a little bit of anxiety over things, and at her little age, I'm trying to teach her and talk to her that, you can do this. I know it's scary, but you're strong and brave. And I don't know if I have the right answer for that because when you're talking to somebody that's young and their little anxieties to us as adults feel like they're not a big deal, they're inconsequential, but in their little worlds, they are big deals. And that's what my daughter is dealing with right now. And I keep trying to boost her up and saying, you can do hard things. Mommy's done hard things too that I've been really, really scared. But I just take a deep breath. I close my eyes. I visualize myself doing it. And next thing you know, the day is over and you did it. And imagine how good you're going to feel afterwards and the things that you can do after you've accomplished that fear. But it's hard. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I doubt myself all the time, but I know that look, mommy did hard things and mommy survived, and you can do the same thing, honey, and you can get through this.
Vanessa, I love you. You're so I love you. I think I could feel your emotion and your spirit, and it's amazing. I want to read your book.
Well, yes, thank you. It's been a labor of love. It's been 5 years in the making. it's been an emotional journey. It wasn't easy to write, that's for sure. I would open it up and start typing a chapter or a page here and there, and I would close my laptop down for months or years because it was just too emotional to write. It was reflecting on the journey that my child and I went through, my husband and I went through, my family, my community, and all the worries and the depression I went through and the medical trauma, the MRIs, the hallucinations, and it was hard to write, but the feedback has been phenomenal.
Now that the book is done, was it therapeutic? Do you feel like, I don't know, do you feel better, a little bit lighter maybe?
In a way, yes, and there's been times too that I think, gosh, I wish I would have gotten this book out sooner. Just because I've released a lot of emotion through the journey, and I've known that I'm starting to help people, and that's helping me too, knowing that there's been people all over the United States that have messaged me through Instagram or Facebook and said, "Oh my gosh, I just got your book. I'm a nurse. I'm a PT. I am a social worker, and I didn't even know that this thing called PICS even existed. And this is so great." Or our universities have contacted me. Wow, Vanessa, we want to talk to our graduate students about this topic, but we never even knew it was out there. And I say, yes, I know that's why I'm talking about it now, is because no one knows about this. People are leaving the ICU. They're experiencing PTSD and brain fog and depression, and they don't know why they're feeling this way. It's because they have PICS and they don't know it because it's just not a thing. But now we are becoming more trauma informed and trauma aware. So now it's like, okay, Vanessa, it's time to start talking about this.
Yeah, and it's just by telling our stories. I know sometimes we feel like our stories and yours is so important, but sometimes you feel like who's going to listen, who's going to read the book? But by telling our stories, even if we're helping one person, two people, three people, as long as you don't feel alone as a caregiver. I was a caregiver for my dad. He had glioblastoma. So, he was seeing things and he was losing his sight and all like that. And, you know, you feel so alone. And, just hearing one person say, I've been there and this is what I did, or I'm here to listen to you is just, it's amazing to be able to help someone like that.
And you just said something really profound, is that feeling of being alone. And it's interesting that both sides feel so alone. The patient feels alone. I know I felt alone coming home because I thought, okay, how am I going to fit back into this world? I was this way 2 months ago, and now I am unable to drive, unable to even care for my child, eat a meal. And I felt so alone, like it was just me against this world. But then the caregiver, too, the other side, they feel alone too. They're all of a sudden thrust into this role of being a caregiver when, like my husband, just months before that, he was working full time, doing the dad life and going to the gym and doing his typical routine. And his life changed, and he probably felt really alone too. Here I'm, now a caregiver for my wife and helping my wife in and out of the shower. It's really interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you just said something and it made me think of something else and now I lost it. But um yeah, and oh, I know. And you don't want to be a burden. I mean, I don't want to be a burden and I could do everything, like I don't want to have to ask my husband to help me carry all the groceries in. I want to be able to do it myself. So I have 50 bags on my arm and I'm trying to get into the door. So I can't even imagine when you can't do you just can't do anything. You don't want to be that person, and it's got to be so frustrating.
Yes, I felt like a burden every day, a burden to my parents. My parents were basically raising my child for a while. They picked her up from school, took her to school. She lived there for months on end, and that was really depressing too, feeling like, okay, I need somebody to shower me and
Mhm.
wash my hair. You completely lose your identity too. And I'm sure as a caregiver too, the other side, they lose their identity too because you're used to being one or living one life, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into this other way of living, and your identity completely shifts. For me, my identity was the mom, the wife, the speech pathologist, and I couldn't do any of that. Couldn't
Mhm.
work. Really didn't feel, even though I was still a mom, I surely didn't feel like I could be the mom that I wanted to be, and definitely couldn't be the wife I wanted to be because I was laying in bed, unable to move, doing vocal cord exercises and swallowing exercises all day. Like, that's not the mom I envisioned myself. So I completely lost who I was.
Wow. What an amazing story. Where can people go to find your book?
It's on Amazon, so they just can type in Speechless or Vanessa Abraham and it'll bring up my book. So it's on, yeah, on Amazon. They can also follow me on Instagram, speechless underscore SLP, or on Facebook, speechless SLP. They can get all sorts of updates and information on what I'm doing and where I'm speaking and all sorts of good information.
I would love to talk to you again. I would love to have you on again.
Yes, thank you. I would love to too. This is all stuff I'm very, very passionate about now.
I love that.